They got to romance the stone. You know what I'm saying?
Apparently.
If this movie was made today, it would be called Rizzing Up the Stone. How do you feel about the word Riz?
I don't understand it. I'm not a fan.
I hate it.
As they come out of the cave with the emerald, though, here's Ralph, has them at gunpoint, and then they're like, why would you do this? And apparently he knows all of Jack's intentions, because he was like, he was going to scam you out of the stone. And Jack's like, oh, you got me. And it's like, whoa. And then he says the line. He goes, he was going to romance the stone away from you. You're like, ow, he said it.
But if Danny DeVito is playing that role today, he would say, like, he was going to rizz up the stone for you. Well, someone's got to rizz that stone.
Someone needs, there's a lot of rizzing going on in this movie.
She likes guys, so do you, muddy comb.
Hey, what's poppin', you corn dogs and kernels? Welcome back to another episode of your favorite movie review podcast, Just Play It.
I know it's my favorite.
I am one of two hosts on this show. My name is James. That's it. That's all.
Wow, I was really expecting a lot more from you today. I'm your other host. I'm Nick.
Because I am otherwise known as Captain Pop, Captain Crunch, Jimmy Crack Corn. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
That time of year already, huh?
Already. Nick, I have a question for you. How do you feel about Valentine's Day? Because I have opinions.
I'll tell you what, my wife and I, not big Valentine's Day people. We don't go out for Valentine's Day. I don't need a day to tell my wife I love her.
God damn it. You speak my language.
Yeah, we don't go out for overpriced, crowded dinners and drinks on Valentine's Day. We stay home, do our own thing.
Amateur.
Yeah.
You know what really grinds my gears is Valentine's Day. It's corporations telling me to go buy chocolates and go buy cards. It's like, bitch, I don't need you telling me to love my wife on a specific day. It's like, oh, it's February 14th. I guess I got to go get chocolates. Although my wife does love candy. So that is the only reason that she would call this a good holiday. Otherwise, we feel the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the week after Valentine's Day, when the candy goes on sale, that's a good time to pull in the haul. Growing up, Valentine's Day, February 14th, my mama's birthday. It was never a big thing in our house. It's like it's mama's birthday. So.
Trump's Valentine's Day. Yep. Not even worth acknowledging this phony ass crap because it's Mama Justice's birthday right there.
Yeah. I'm not here for your propaganda. Damn it.
Now, Valentine's Day as a kid was kind of sick because we got everyone had to bring like cards to school, distribute them to the classmates, and you got candy. And I just remember getting like Space Jam themed ones in 4th grade or 3rd grade. It was a pretty sick time.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was the best part about being a kid. But now I think back at it, like what our parents had to go shell out an extra $40 because it's Valentine's Day. I don't know if I'm going to do that for my kid. I mean, I'm sure that won't be around for kids, when we have them, but
what, Valentine's Day?
Just the whole like, tradition. No, but like the traditions of like, oh, bringing candy into school. You can't have candy in school these days. You can't just be bringing in food to share.
I mean, do they even do that? I have no idea. I haven't been to school in like decades.
I know my wife as a teacher gets a lot of candy from kids on Valentine's Day.
But do they give each other cards and candy?
That's
I have to bring Elizabeth on the show for that answer. All right, cool. Well, we have a Valentine's Day adjacent movie.
Whoa.
Because we are watching Romancing the Stone from 1984, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Romancing the Stone. James, I think you have something to tell us about the screenwriter of this before we even jump into anything.
Yeah, before we get into the roster here, I'm going to hit you first and foremost. So this is written by Diane Thomas, and she's a first-time screenwriter with this project. She was actually working as a waitress up in Malibu off the PCH there, and she was trying to sell this screenplay. It was getting shopped around, and Michael Douglas ended up picking it up and bought it for $250,000, which apparently was pretty expensive and a little bit outrageous because everyone was saying, she's a first-time writer. What are you doing, Michael Douglas? Michael Douglas, of course, is the star of this movie. We'll get into how he landed the role, but he is a little bit of an actor and producer in his career because he does have producing credits for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and The China Syndrome, which he also starred in. Both projects came before this one. I believe he wasn't even trying to be in this movie. He just wanted to produce it, and then he ended up just filling the role. It's a Michael Douglas classic for sure. This movie was very popular. It was a hit when it came out. It was well received. It did well in the box office. It was nothing to scoff at. Diane Thomas was like, all right, cool. I'm going to be a screenwriter now. I was looking at her IMDb and I thought she was a one-hit wonder because there's Romancing the Stone and then there's the sequel to this movie, which I didn't even know existed, called The Jewel of the Nile, I believe. And I thought, okay, did she just want to be one and done? No, she actually joined Steven Spielberg's Amblin Company to write and rewrite screenplays for him. Unfortunately, Thomas died in a car crash off PCH. She was being driven by her then boyfriend at the time, actor Stephen Norman, and the car spun out of control on a rain slick highway and smashed into a power pole in Malibu. Unfortunately, a very quick and abrupt ending for a very promising screenwriting career. I'll just say this because I had this thought the entire time watching this movie. I saw, 1984. Raiders was 1981. This is just giving me like huge Raiders ripoff vibes. I'll throw some respect on it because this screenplay was written 5 years earlier in 1979. And like we discussed in our Raiders of the Lost Ark episode, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg conceived the idea in 1980. I was going to start ripping it apart for that, but I'll give it some kudos. So I'm going to say shout out to Diane Thomas, RIP. Got to pour one out for the homie.
Yeah. Funny enough, she when she died, she was working on a third script for Indiana Jones franchise.
That's right.
So what she got accused of ripping off, quote unquote, she ended up joining Spielberg to help do. So funny how the industry works sometimes.
Diane Thomas, this is her creation, gone too soon. This is at the helm of director Robert Zemeckis. I know Robert Zemeckis by name because he has directed one of my favorite trilogies of all time. But just to kind of give you some perspective here for his point in the career, he's at the third pitch. He's got strike one with this movie called I Want to Hold Your Hand. He's on strike two with this movie called Used Cars, both considered lackluster flops. And then he's gonna hit up this movie to direct it. So he was actually lined up to direct Cocoon from 1985. That eventually went to Ron Howard. And according to Zemeckis, it was Fox's then head of physical production, who he didn't name, was under the impression that the head of physical production was out to get their movie, Romancing the Stone. So while they were down in Mexico shooting, they found out later that this top dog, the exec, he was kind of spewing all this smack talk about how they were out of control and the director doesn't know what he's doing on Romancing the Stone. So the producers of Cocoon made a business decision and they ended up firing him as the film's director. And then with the success of Romancing the Stone, it's the name, right? I thought I want to say romanticizing. With the success of Romancing the Stone, they actually kind of came back and were like, oh, would you still be interested? And then he's like, I'm going to politely decline because now I have the juice to fuel my passion project with my buddy boy, Bob Gale. And that would be the Back to the Future trilogy.
Yes, sir.
One of my favorites. And Zemeckis would go on to direct Forrest Gump, Castaway, 2022's Pinocchio, and of course, the 1988 banger, Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. And what's fun is if you look through a lot of the IMDb credits of maybe not the bigger names in this movie, some of the bigger names, but even some of the smaller names, a lot of them stay tied to Zemeckis. And so he's definitely one of those guys who sort of pulls the people close to him around him and likes to work with, which I always appreciate that out of a director and actors.
And so Bob Hoskins, who is the detective in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that's who they originally wanted to play Ralph in this movie, but that went to Danny DeVito. I feel like Zemeckis had the power and was like, I want to have Bob Hoskins play this role. And then when he turned it down, Michael Douglas, they're like, well, hey, my old roommate Danny DeVito in New York can play this role, no problem, especially after he missed out on Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
playing Sala, as we discussed in our Raiders episode.
Another Spielberg tie.
Everything's real tight down there in La La Land.
Yeah, it's crazy how it all works out. This movie does star Michael Douglas, aforementioned, Kathleen Turner, and Danny DeVito, again, aforementioned.
What's not aforementioned is Kathleen Turner. I'm not too familiar with her. The one thing I did recognize her in was that she actually voices Jessica Rabbit in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So there you go.
Yep.
It's all coming back, baby.
That's what I was referring to, like how they all kind of, stick together. I'm not sure if I'd say like each other, but, you work with somebody, you have some familiarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep them around.
So this movie has an estimated budget of $10 million, and the worldwide box office is a cool $86.5 million.
It's a damn good
We're looking
return.
at a nice, juicy 866% return right there. So I think you could say it did well. And Robert Zemeckis, he did not have strike one, strike two, and then just X from Hollywood. He stayed in there, and good for him.
Big time. And I was looking it up. I don't know if we're planning to watch it, but even like Jewel on the Nile, Jewel of the Nile, whatever it was, the sequel, it also pulled in like 90 million. So they had themselves a hit on their hands, as one would say. What would you say if I said we should read this log line and get our asses into plot talk?
I would love that. But I have one question for you.
Whoa.
A common question. Have you seen this before?
No, this was the first one for me.
All
You
right.
know my dad, the cinephile Jerry Justice, and rom-coms weren't always what was being watched in the house.
But this is kind of adventure-y.
It is.
I'd say it's an adventure movie, but like, yeah, we'll discuss how the balance of the romance and the action, the campy kind of fun.
If it was an 80s movie, it was a lot more, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone type of movies going on in the house.
Well, if Sylvester Stallone ended up playing this role, maybe Jerry would have watched it. All right. But I have seen this before. I think I saw this maybe like a year or two ago. I think this was a random pandemic watch. I figured I'm going to watch this movie I've never seen. I didn't remember a whole lot. I remembered the ending and that Danny DeVito was in it, and it was Michael Douglas, and that's it.
Perfect. That's all you need to know.
Hit me with the log line here.
A mousy romance novelist sets off for Colombia to ransom her kidnapped sister and soon finds herself in the middle of a dangerous adventure hunting for treasure with a mercenary rogue.
Mousy. What does that even mean? Like she's like small and lame, or just mousing around like
Stuart Little-esque.
Stuart Little energy. All right, let's bring that Stuart Little energy into plot talk. Plot talk.
All right, so we're opened up with this like a Western style movie, and a lot of it's done over a voiceover of Joan, our main character, Kathleen Turner, her voice. And it's this scene where this damsel in distress seemingly is being held up at gunpoint, ends up throwing a sick knife throw into this dude's chest who's trying to rob her or sexually assault her. I'm not quite sure.
A little bit of both.
I felt like there was going to be more sexual assault in this movie. There was quite a few times when I was like, are they going to do, she's just a woman alone in the jungle running across a bunch of like men who haven't been around civilization. I was like,
might take a dark turn, but thank God it didn't.
This might get a little weird. Never did, thankfully. But what we find out is Kathleen Turner's character, again, Joan, our heroine of this movie. She is a romance novelist, and she is basically narrating the ending to one of her novels, and we're just seeing the scene played out.
That's a wild ending, dude. I thought that was like going to be the climax of the movie, but
no, that's how it
she ends up murdering her villain enemy, or just a random guy comes in. And then the good guy comes in and gives her a smooch, and then they just ride off in the sunset. She's like crying as she's writing this ending. I'm like, it wasn't that good.
Right? The first thing I noticed is you come in like this lady who's getting held up at gunpoint, who's portraying this character in her novel. She's kind of smoking hot, and you see some boobie, a little bit of like see-through.
I will plead the fifth if my wife listens to this, but the good guy hero, he had the best job on the movie. Because he just had to ride up on a horse and kiss this woman, and then that was it. That's all. That's what he was paid to do on this movie.
Reason I brought it up, this is Kimberlyn Herron actually a Playboy of the Year model.
Ah, okay. Makes
So
sense.
I was like, who is this?
Me and my wife were watching it and we're like, why is she wet? she's
Yeah.
like in a wet t-shirt contest.
Yeah, like very see-through. Like
Yeah,
pretty
super
risque
see-through.
for 1984, right?
Yeah. Well, this is post PG-13, so I'm assuming this is PG-13.
Has to be, yeah.
Oh, this was PG.
With the amount of swearing, there couldn't have been PG-13 yet then. This might have just slipped under the radar of PG-13. Oh, yeah, it snuck in. It snuck in 3 months before PG-13 became a thing. 3 months, because this happened July 1st, 1984 is when PG-13 became a thing, and this was released March 30th, 1984.
That's right. I remember talking about movies from 1983 from last year, and we were asking the same question, and then that's when we discovered the PG-13 rating came out July 1st, 1984. So yeah, PG, baby.
Because I was also going to say there was a good amount of swearing in the movie.
And violence, but we'll get to that.
We get out of this scene, from Joan's novel, and we get introduced to her character a little bit. So we find out she's successful. There's a lot of like posters and like cardboard cutouts of her characters from the novel she's written. We also realize she's very lonely, and they really make sure to like hammer this home. She makes dinner with her cat and like sits down for dinner with her cat. She's like pining over these fictional characters she's created, right? Like, oh, this hero in this book is who I'm in love with. Like, just very.
She's out of tissues in the house because she cries all the time.
Yeah.
I think the character buildup for Joan is really good because we can get a lot of information and in very little time with her being a novelist. Obviously, she's alone because she's acting like a crazy person. She cries a lot. She's a hopeless romantic, and she leaves herself notes all over.
Has a lot of booze.
Has hella booze. She's basically another Marion from Raiders of the Lost Ark. She's an alcoholic, and we'll see why later on. But she leaves Post-it notes all over the house because her mind's all frantic. It says, buy more tissues, meeting here, this, there. So this lady's all over the place. She also throws glasses and plates into the fireplace. This lady's unhinged.
That fireplace does not have a large opening. She's like, it's a bad throw.
It's not.
It's not.
So it's like she's done with her meal and just like a frisbee throws her plate into the fireplace. I'm like, all right, you're a little crazy, Joan. Nick, I see that you wrote down that there's also 80s porno music during the dinner with the cat.
Yeah, there is. I think we're going to have a lot to say about the music in this, but there's some sensual porno music happening in this opening scene. Again, as she's preparing dinner for her cat, putting like a garnish on it and like lighting candles and sitting down with her cat. And I was like, this is not, again, really hammering home how lonely this chick is.
All right. Well, since we dropped the keyword music, I am going to shout out Alan Silvestri is on the track. Holy cow. This guy is my personal favorite. John Williams is undisputed worldwide phenomenon when it comes to movie scores, but I personally love Alan Silvestri. Back to the Future, The Avengers, Ready Player One. I love those scores.
So Danny Elfman 3?
Danny Elfman he's not breaking top two for me personally. I love Danny Elfman. Obviously, he's a Just Play It legend because he's like all over the place. But for me, I personally love Alan Silvestri's scores. And this does mark the first time that Robert Zemeckis and Alan Silvestri work together. Dude, talk about ride or die. Any movie that Zemeckis directs, Alan Silvestri is doing the music. Every single movie. Again,
Zemeckis got his guys, and he brings them along.
The Zemeckis gang. You know what I'm saying? But I personally love Alan Silvestri. And now I'll have a lot to say about the music because there's glimpses of vintage and classic Silvestri stingers and scores and cues, but a lot of the music in this is kind of funky. It's like almost like Seinfeld. It's like almost like disco. It's like really like, it reminded me of like Miami Vice or just I'm like, this is not that like regal sound that I'm used to. The only hints I got was at the opening title. It almost had, it showed like Romancing the Stone, and it kind of had like an Avengers flavor to it. It's like, that's when I remembered. I was like, oh, this sounds like a Silvestri joint. And the rest of the movie's like Seinfeld bass lines.
Even when they're supposed to be like suspenseful scenes, it's funk. It's just straight up like fun loving funk. There's a part where a lady's getting kidnapped, and there's just some peppy music going on, just some like real snappy.
Is this when the sister gets kidnapped?
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like a comedic kidnap. It's kind of funny.
It is, but it just...
I get it. But a lot of it was not the Silvestri signature sound, I'll say.
No, it's not. So after Joan finishes her novel, she goes and meets her editor, Gloria, who, again, is trying to set her up with guys. She's lonely.
I thought that was her agent.
Editor?
I thought it was her agent.
Could be both.
Okay.
So, talking about, oh, you need to find a guy. She's like, Mr. Right's out there. And I think she calls, like, the guy out there, one of her, like, the dudes from her book, which again, you're just like, woman, you're living in a weird lonely fantasy world. On her way back to her apartment, her neighbor, Mrs. Irwin, hands her this package, this like really large pack, not large, but like a large enveloped package with like a ton of, postage on it. It's clearly been through like customs and a lot of different facilities. And it was sent to her by her recently murdered brother-in-law, Eduardo. And you're like, well, all right. What are we going to get into?
Some shady stuff. That's what.
While she was out, there was a man who tried breaking into her apartment. Poor building superintendent was like, hey, what are you doing breaking into that apartment? And this guy just murders him.
That was like the janitor, right?
Yeah.
Man.
It's kind of like the maintenance guy.
In back-to-back weeks, it is not a good time to be a building manager in a large apartment building, because you're either going to get hauled out onto the street buck naked, or you're just going to get shot by this shady Zolo character.
No respect. No respect for the
for the apartment game. What the hell, dude? Weak.
So Joan comes back, finds her apartment basically run through, ransacked, and she gets a phone call from her sister Elaine, who has been kidnapped by smugglers.
So this is the funny kidnapping scene. She's like leaving. She's in Cartagena, and then she's coming out of like her house or apartment or whatever. And there's like these kids playing in an alleyway, and this 12-year-old kid who's like has like a rock sling. I don't know what that is. Is it a toy, or is it like a David and Goliath thing?
Looks like an old school like slingshot.
Yeah, but it's like, I think it had like 2 rocks on each end of like a leather strap, so you can like huck it and it would go and like wrap something up.
Could be a Colombian toy. I don't know.
Well, that Colombian toy does exactly what it looks like it's made to do, and it lassos. What's her face? What is her name? Elaine. It lassos Elaine and simultaneously knocks her out by hitting her in the forehead. And then she falls perfectly down in her AC Cobra, which this 12-year-old kid just hops in and just GTAs the situation.
Takes off.
Yeah.
I always find it funny in these sort of situations. Like, Elaine's trying to look inconspicuous. Like, she knows she's in danger and she's trying to sneak away. And it's like, woman, putting sunglasses on does not make you inconspicuous. You have this giant floppy, like, designer hat. You're in a dress. You're in Colombia. You're the nicest person dressed there. And you're jumping into your AC Cobra. Like, everyone knows who you are. You would have got robbed if you weren't being looked at. Like, if people weren't trying to find you.
Yep. Emily said the same exact thing. We shouted out the trope of glasses and hat equals disguised.
Yeah. I was like, come on, guys.
12-year-old with a rock sling. He's got this.
He does.
Was this kid working with these guys? And these guys, I mean, Ralph and Ira. These are the kidnappers of the situation.
They must have been, or like maybe given $100 or something. I don't know.
Easy $100.
Like you said, Ira and Ralph are the kidnappers. They're cousins. And Ira is played by Zach Norman. And Ralph is our boy, Danny DeVito.
The legend.
And so they call Joan, and they're like, hey, that map that was given to you by your brother-in-law, we're using that as ransom. Like, give us that and we'll give us your sister back. I don't know how they knew it got to Joan. They must have been tracking it. I don't know. 1,
we had questions about why it was sent to Joan. And 2, we were wondering how all these 3-4 letter words followed by a question mark. I think you kind of have to piece together a lot of missing information. So if I were to provide an answer, I would say that the murdered brother-in-law knew he was in trouble and wanted to get the map out of the country and out of these guys' hands and these other third parties that are coming after it, and sent it to maybe the safest contact he knew of his wife's sister. And then they tortured him and asked, like, what the hell did you do with the map? And then lo and behold, he gave up the information that he sent it to Joan.
Why don't you just burn the map?
He's got to find the treasure. It's not over. They got to romance the stone. You know what I'm saying?
Apparently.
Well, someone's got to riz that stone.
Yeah, there's a lot of rizzing going on in this movie. So Joe needs to fly to Colombia. And James, you have something to say about this airport scene.
Yeah, did Donald Trump write this airport scene? Because it's pretty racist. I'm sure there's like a sophisticated airport. I don't know why every third person is holding a livestock animal, and it's like piss poor health conditions, and everyone's like looking like they're all disheveled and frantic. It's like, dude, like there's got to be a nice airport in Colombia.
I don't even know where she flies into, to be honest.
That's a great question, because she lands and she's trying to get to Cartagena. I was thinking, isn't there an airport there? The answer is yes. International.
Has it been around since 1984?
I Googled when it was built, and it was like from the 40s.
Yeah, I see. That's the thing. I don't even know where she went. Like, maybe this would make sense if she had to like jump on a puddle jumper and like fly into some little remote area. But if you're taking an international flight into Colombia, again, I have no idea which airport she's even at right now. We don't know what city she's in. Impossible to know. She lands. She wants to get on a bus. Obviously doesn't know any of the language. And she's approached by this guy, Colonel Zolo. Was Zolo the guy at her apartment?
Zolo? Yeah, no, that was Zolo. Zolo off the janitor.
Yeah. Zolo's all over the place. Why he didn't just wait around at her apartment to kill her or interrogate her, I don't know. He decided to fly back to Colombia and wait for her there.
I think he followed her. I think he followed her to the airport and then flew to Colombia on the. Yeah, that's what happened.
Why?
Because he knew that she was going to Colombia.
But he was already in New York in her apartment.
So he's in New York. He ransacks the place. He leaves.
He murders
the poor janitor. I believe he's waiting outside the apartment complex, and that's when Joan gets a frantic phone call. And then all of a sudden it's like, I gotta go to Colombia, like on a whim. And then he catches up to her then and just tails her, and then sees that she's going to the airport. And I think he just followed her.
I would have just stayed in her apartment until she got home. I feel like that would have been, you already murdered, in that place. I don't know why you wouldn't just stick around and finish the job. But he tricks her into taking the wrong bus. Again, this seems like a pretty lawless airport. You probably just could have done the kidnapping there.
So Zolo approaches her, and she's like having trouble trying to ask questions. She wants to get to Cartagena, and then Zolo comes up and says, "Oh, like, where are you trying to go?" And she's like, "Oh, you speak English." And then he misdirects her on the wrong bus. Meanwhile, Danny DeVito, who plays Ralph, is trying to track her down because I guess they also knew that she was going to be on a certain flight. Well, it's weird because they're like, come to this hotel. Hostage. Yeah, they're like, come to this hotel with the map. And then Danny DeVito was like sent to intercept her. I guess it makes sense. Make sure she.
Well, then why wouldn't Danny DeVito, who's American, go up to her and say, "Hey, I'm the guy who called. Let's go."
He didn't see her in time because he was looking on the Cartagena bus, and then she was already put on the wrong bus. He was in the background looking.
But I mean, the whole movie, he has a chance to confront her and say, "Hey, I'm the guy with your sister. Give me the map." But he like tails her from a distance.
I don't know. That's a great question. That's one of the many good questions we have with this movie.
Joan's on this bus now, and she has questions. She doesn't know what's going on. So she accidentally distracts the bus driver by talking to him, and the bus just absolutely destroys this Land Rover. I have a lot of questions about the physics of that because the bus has a pretty flat front, and the Land Rover has a pretty flat front. And when it lands into the Land Rover, it like lifts the Land Rover up onto like the hood of the bus.
And I want to say it was driving uphill.
Yes.
So it'd be going even slower. But like, I guess that you can kind of make an argument of how it lifts it up because it's coming from downhill and driving uphill and maybe got underneath it. But I don't know. I just know this was very irresponsible bus driving because homeboy is just full head turned around, just like, what? Huh? What? 5 seconds. And then
on this muddy road.
Yeah. on this like super sketchy road on the cliffside.
So all the passengers get out and they're just going to hoof it to the next closest town. Jones stays back. Just like, I'll just stay here in the jungle till I figure out what's going on.
Well, no, it's because fucking creepy Zolo, who is pretending to be a nice guy, he says, oh, we don't need to walk. There will be another bus coming. And then Jones like, all right, I'll believe this one guy that I've been talking to the whole time. Gotta say, there's this really awkwardly drawn out moment right before he sticks him up for the purse to get the map. So all the bus passengers are walking uphill. Zolo walks towards them to kind of see if they're walking away fully. And Jones sitting on the suitcase in the same shot setup. Zolo walks out of frame. It goes to Zolo looking at the passengers. Then it goes back to Joan for like 2-3 seconds. And then Zolo moseys on in the frame. And then there's like a shot of Joan looking at Zolo and a shot of Zolo looking at Joan. It's like really awkward. And then Zolo whips a pistol out. And I swear there's like a whole second, like a super delayed reaction from Joan when she sees the pistol. Nick, I want you to draw a pistol on me. I'll be Joan. What?
Can't believe it.
Joan, dude, you're helpless.
What? The purse. La bolsa.
So Zolo has his gun out, and then all of a sudden there's this shadowy figure walking along the ridge near them.
He does look like the silhouette from Joan's fictional dream guy from her apartment.
Yes.
Same silhouette.
This is Michael Douglas here. Like, here's our guy.
Yep, we knew this movie starred Michael Douglas. Here he is.
And Zolo takes a shot at him.
Mistake.
Yeah, hits his water cantina sack.
Water bladder.
And our character Michael Douglas, played by Michael Douglas, named Jack T. Colton.
No, Jack T. Colton plays Michael Douglas.
Plays Michael. Yeah, let's be honest here. He doesn't flinch. He just has his water sack. He's not concerned. Like, Zolo could have taken a second shot. Jack doesn't move whatsoever. He's just standing there. But he whips out a shotgun, like a sawn-off shotgun, and just starts ripping shotgun shots at this guy.
Okay, Nick.
Blatantly. And there's a bystander there. Like,
so when I watched this scene, I texted you afterwards because it's a known thing and a motif on this podcast that we count bullets when there's guns involved. You have to keep the filmmakers accountable. And I was watching this shotgun scene and I thought, this seems like way more shells are being shot out of this shotgun than is physically possible. Because how much would a basic pump shotgun hold?
I mean, on your best day,
like 2 in the barrel, 1 in the chamber.
Yeah, I mean 4 or 5. Again, if we're talking, I don't know what kind of shotgun it was, 1984, but for the most part,
it just looked like a regular pump action shotgun. It didn't look like a crazy spaz.
A lot more than what is fired in this shot. I'll tell you that much.
You can put on like aftermarket attachments and I don't know, maybe get 10 shots off. But Jack T. fucking Colton over here, he's hitting us with the long range shotty. And he even does a jumping shot, like something out of Fortnite, just like hit X and then hit shoot. And he jumps off the cliff, shoots. This guy shoots off 9 shots. The jump shot is the 8th. And then he reloads. And then he does another 9 shots around the bus when Zolo is scurrying underneath the bus and he runs through the bus. He's shooting the windows. It's just pow, 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 pow. He's ready for that 10th as Zolo is running away. But then he decides, I'm going to save my ammo. But then he realizes all his birds are gone from his Land Rover. And out of frustration, he fires off a 10th and 11th.
Just bam, bam.
Out of rage.
I don't know where he's holding all these shells on his persons either.
Couple things here. One, the shotgun's OP. I think for our end of the year episode, this is going to be on our tier list of most overpowered weapons. The Jack T. Colton pump shotgun. No doubt. 2, this tells me something. His OP shotgun can hold at least 11 shells. So he already fired it off 2 times before this bus encounter. What was he doing out there in the middle of nowhere with his car parked on the side of the road on this isolated cliff highway? What shady shotgun shit was he pulling up there? Was this like a bad bird deal?
Bird deal gone wrong?
Yeah, I think it was a bad bird deal up in them hills. Because like, what the hell is he doing pulled off to the side of the road? And he's like hella separated from his car.
Leaving his birds in his car on the side of the road like that?
Doesn't seem like Jack trustworthy Colton to me.
It does not. Now, we did mention Jack T. Colton, and this is Michael Douglas. There was original casting plans for Sylvester Stallone, which would have been hilarious to me the more I think about it. The role was also turned down by the likes of Jack Nicholson, Clint Eastwood, and Christopher Reeves. So when we talked at the top of this podcast about, it wasn't Michael Douglas's plan to act, he just wanted to produce. He eventually just had to step into the role because they were just running out of options for casting.
Hey, you know what? If no one else wants to do it, you just got to pull a Thanos and say, fine, I'll do it myself. Put on that gauntlet, grab that shotgun, and go to town in Colombia.
Do what you got to do. So after some back and forth between Joan and Jack.
You don't understand. It's a matter of life and death. If I don't get to my
How much?
I'll pay you $100. $200.
For 5.
What?
My minimum price for taking a stranded woman to a telephone is $400.
Will you take $375 in traveler's checks?
American Express?
Of course.
Our deal.
Yeah, I had a question. What the is a traveler's check?
Yeah.
I had to look it up. It's like, they're still around and you can get them from your bank, but I guess it's just it's just a different form of cash, but like,
it's like a cashier's check.
Do you have to say you're going to Colombia, or is it just like this cashier or this traveler's check? You just get it from the bank and accept it anywhere that they accept traveler's checks.
I don't know. Sounds like a scam to me. So there's a funny line in here, actually, and it's a bit of a theme throughout the movie. There's some like tongue-in-cheek lines where they're kind of winking at the audience and making references to things outside of the movie. One of Michael Douglas's co-stars on was it a TV show or a movie he did? Streets of San Francisco.
It was a TV show.
His co-star for that TV show became the spokesperson for American Express. So when Joan tells Jack that she has traveler's checks, he goes, "Are they Amex?"
And he's like, "You got yourself a deal." It's like, "Oh, I gotta get myself some Amex traveler's checks." After they make this financial deal, they start lugging it up the mountain. Our boy Jack T. Colton straight yeets the suitcase off a cliff that Joan was lugging along because he saw that it was just stupid and useless and just slowing him down. And I thought, what if the traveler's checks were in there?
What if she had an inhaler that was in there and she has asthma?
Yeah, he doesn't care.
No, it's a wildly irresponsible thing to do, to just throw somebody's entire suitcase off of a cliff.
So far, Jack has proven to be a crazy person.
Yeah. And what happens after he yeets it off the cliff, James?
I was going to say, there's this whole mudslide scene, which was pretty cool. So the production had to dig these troughs for the stunt peeps to slide down, and they were basically thrusted down the hill with gallons on gallons of water. One of the hillsides actually did give way as they were filming. I don't recall from my research if it was after the whole crew had completely moved or if some were still behind trying to move equipment dollies out. Some people maybe got like kind of hit by the mudslide. I don't know. Our homegirl, Kathleen Turner, said she got so many stitches on this movie just because the working conditions shooting out on location in Mexico, doubling for Colombia. She said, I got injured a lot on a couple occasions. 1 was the mudslide, 2 was the stunt mudslide, and 3 is a fight scene coming up later. But she was being a dog about it.
Trooper.
This mudslide scene has Joan and Jack go down the hill instead of Jack and Jill go up the hill.
Whoa.
Instead of that happy ending, it ends with Joan landing in the water and then Jack does a face plant into Joan's crotch. This joke kind of aged poorly with the almost demise of MD. And I can make a lot of jokes about Michael Douglas's throat cancer and HPV and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Nice.
I'm just going to leave it alone.
I also thought it was funny how after that moment, like the whole tone changed. He's like, I'm going to throw your suitcase off I don't like you. And he lands right in her lap. And then all of a sudden he's like, get up. We're going to go. We're going to get through this. You're like, yeah. Dude,
Jack he's like bipolar, dude. He's crazy. And we'll see coming up here about how unhinged this couple is.
So they're traveling through the jungle, trying to elude Zolo and the military police that Zolo commands. And they do find themselves in this abandoned plane. Jack makes a little campfire, a bonfire. He also breathes in the smoke of the campfire, which is just like burning magazines. And he's like,
No, it's marijuana.
Is it?
It's a drug plane. Yeah, they find like those where they call them the kilos. They found like kilos of marijuana, and they're like, "Oh yeah, marijuana, you smoke?" And Joan's like, "I went to college." So Jack is like shotgunning the marijuana smoke from the bonfire inside the down jungle plane. Meanwhile, Joan is wolfing down olives with crazy eyes out of a jar, and Jack is taking a bottle of booze to the dome. At this point, I'm like, these guys are in for a good time, and they're acting like crackheads.
Yes.
Joan also she's very thirsty for booze and thirsty for Jack, because she's like googly eye and Jack, even though he's been nothing but an asshole so far. They're sharing this like bottle of booze. And before this, when they were evading Zolo, they took like this rope swing across a river. That one of the ropes that they swing on is completely different from the stunt rope. Like the real rope that they're grabbing and the main shots is like an actual vine, and the stunt rope is just like a rope with like fake leaves on it. It's very apparent. And then when Michael Douglas swings across and he like smacks into the rock wall, did you notice the rock wall give in because it was made of foam? It was like really squishy. It was a squishy landing, so he didn't actually injure himself, but I was like, come on guys, you got to cover that up. As Michael Douglas is swinging across this river, Joan is like having a panic attack and whips out a mini bottle of booze and just starts drinking it.
Just downing it. Jack's like, what are you doing? And then he like takes it and then he drinks it. You're like, oh, you are two peas in a pod.
I'm out there running for my life. You're drinking? And he grabs it and drinks it. And that got a genuine laugh from me. But dude, these guys are, they're freaking crazy. Like Jack is crazy. Joan is thirsty and crazy eyed. Jack's also a little pervy, because there's that scene where Joan is like hacking the leaves with the machete. It's raining and like some of her leg is exposed. And then Jack is like staring at it and he like licks his lips and he's like, did you notice that part?
I did, but I chalked it up to this man's just been in the jungle with his birds like for far too long.
It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay to be a pervy bird man.
I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying yeah, he's just been trapped in the jungle and all of a sudden this hot American girl stumbles into you and you're just like, I don't know. Like the jungle man is taking over.
The jungle man.
The jungle man. He's like, I'm just, you just devolve into basic man. You're just like, legs. There's a point in the plane though, we get more of the like how lonely Joan is, because she's talking to Jack, and first off, she says this line like, you don't care about me. You only care about yourself. And it's like, bitch, I've known you for 3 hours. Like, yeah, what do you expect? What, you want me to just care about you?
Just try to save her with a shotgun back there.
Yeah, he saved your life and he's taking you.
Well, although, I mean, only because Zolo took a shot at him. I think he just like saw red and he's like, my birds.
He has a super shotgun and just went to town. Yeah. But she starts talking like a real man would do this and that. And it's just all the stuff from her romance novels. And you're just like, oh, yeah, life's not like that, lady. Guy. Nah, it's not. Eventually, our heroes stumble upon a small town and encounter a drug lord named Juan. They believe Juan is probably the guy who owned the plane where all the drugs that they just inhaled came from.
But they're looking for a car. And when they ask the townsfolk who has a car, they direct them to Juan's house.
They say he has a car he calls Pepe.
Juan's not having it. He whips the gun out and he's like, F this dude. But then turns out he's a huge fan of Joan's novels. And he happily helps them into his house and wants to offer his car. But I gotta say, he's doing too much of pointing the gun at Joan and Jack's faces with his finger on the trigger after they have realized who Joan is. So Juan is a little bit also unhinged.
Kind of like that prototypical, or now maybe prototypical, like eccentric drug lord who's just like waving the gun around and like being really eccentric and, in people's faces, but like in a happy, laughy way. But you're like, I don't know if I trust you. Turns out you can trust Juan. He's a good dude.
He's also crazy.
And he helps them escape from Zolo in like a Ford, souped up Ford truck.
Yeah, I was like, it
Like
wasn't a
Goodyear
Bronco.
stickers on it.
Yeah, it was like it was pretty sick, actually.
It looked like the early 80s Ranger. Like back when the Ford Ranger meant something.
Is
It
it?
is a Bronco.
Yeah, it is a Bronco.
It just has the top, the back taken off.
It's pretty sick. Yeah, the stunt driver almost runs over a chicken for realsies, and I was scared for that chicken's life.
Yeah.
And then the next shot, he runs over the chicken. Like it tumbles underneath the car.
Oh, yeah. Right over the chicken. Yeah.
I'm like, dude, animal safety, hello. Also, the bridgeless river with the automated ramp that Juan has to escape Zolo and his goons. This ramp does nothing because the ramp is angled at like a 45-degree slope. And as Pepe, the Bronco, is rushing towards it, you would think, okay, they're going to like take a jump and go up. But in the stunt shot, the wide shot, this Bronco is just flying in a straight line. Like it just drove off a cliff at like 80 miles an hour and then lands on the other side of the river. The ramp didn't do anything. It was all for show for the movie. Because if it did something, they would have done like a Dukes of Hazzard, like, whoa, but no, it's just zooming across the river.
Big thum.
Full send.
So he calls his truck Pepe. The actor here who plays Juan, Alfonso Arau. Alfonso acted in a movie called Posse with Michael Douglas's dad, Kirk Douglas, where his name in that movie was Pepe.
Easter egg.
But they do get away from Zolo, and Zolo is just, Zolo's a problem, dude.
Fat problem.
He has all the resources in the world. He wants this map, but it is more clear to me as he's had multiple opportunities to get the map. He just wants Joan dead.
Well, it is revealed that Zolo is the guy that killed Joan's sister's husband. So is he just like a super corrupt cop? Was he like
I can't
a military
tell if he's
guy?
corrupt.
Is he from Colombia?
Yeah.
What's his deal?
I think it's just sort of like maybe he's in charge of like mercenary forces. He has like his own like
Just as like government clearance, but just like does whatever the hell he wants to get treasure.
Yeah, because apparently he can go to New York, kill a man, and then jump on a plane.
Dude, it's crazy, dog.
You can't stop him.
Holy shit.
So Juan ends up taking Joan and Jack to a nearby town.
In transport of this, they do find a significant landmark that the map was making references to. So we're thinking, okay, they escaped Zolo and they recognize that they're very close to the treasure. So there's a little bit of talks of, do we go after the treasure or do we go straight to Cartagena and then seal the deal? Or do we bust the deal and spin the wheel? Jack's all about busting the deal and Joan is about upholding the deal because Jack, I believe, makes a copy. He goes to like a store in this small town, says, do you have a Xerox machine? And he wants to go get the stone because he's team, let's get the stone and use that as a bargaining chip. And Joan is like, no, let's just do what the kidnappers say we need to do. But I don't know. Was Jack going to go rogue and just take it for himself and dip? Was he going to go rogue and take it and then help Joan out later? What do you think?
No, I think he was trying to have his cake and eat it too. He was like, let's get the stone and then they won't know we got it and we'll give them the map anyway. He's like, we're in a win-win.
He literally says that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. He's like, we'll give them the map. They don't know that the treasure's already gone.
Which is something like I would be on board with. Like, yeah, let's go get the treasure and like
sounds
give them the
good.
map. Like, all right, piss off.
And they pretty much agree to it because they get to this town and Jack buys her clothes and they go out dancing. Well, I just want to point out here at this point in the movie, there's 25, 30 minutes left and we really haven't gotten anywhere. We've just been gallivanting through the jungle with escapades and then they bang.
Yep. And they've been together for 2 days. They just banged. And now they're talking about sailing a boat around the world together. Because there's this like little, I wouldn't call it a B story. There's just an ongoing thing that pops up during the movie that Jack says he has a picture of a sailboat, like a generic stock photo sailboat. And, when the birds fly away and his car's all fucked up, he's like, maybe next time, baby. He talks to Joan about wanting to sail around the world. And then she's like, just by yourself. This is in the airplane scene. And then after they bang, then they're like, we should sail around the world together. I'm like, you guys are crackheads. Like you just like fell into like some shitty situation. You lost everything.
They're both so desperate.
You're exhausted. You're dehydrated. You're not thinking straight. And you just banged.
After banging, Zolo shows up. Of course, every time something good's going on and they think they're safe, here comes Zolo. So Jack and Joe, they steal a car, but this is Ralph's car, Danny DeVito's car. He's sleeping in the back, leaves his keys in the ignition because that's, just what you do. And they hop in the car and they're driving off to go find the treasure with Ralph just hanging out in the back. They follow the clues. So apparently this map wasn't very difficult to find the treasure with.
No, really, the main obstacles have been outrunning gunmen, not like solving clues.
Yeah. Like if you didn't have the gunman, this would have been a day.
This would have been like a grocery store run.
Yeah. It's this enormous emerald called El Corazon. Originally they find this like porcelain doll. And he's like, it must be a priceless idol. And she's like, in one of my books, I had them hide the emerald inside of this porcelain doll. And they break it open. And of course, the emerald's there. And you're like, of course.
So what's up with this stone? Like, who put this here? Because it didn't look like super ancient.
Didn't look super ancient. Didn't look very hard to find.
I'm talking about the porcelain doll. Like it was like a Easter bunny or something. So was this like some sick joke? Was this what's his face? What's the boyfriend's name of Elaine?
Eduardo.
Husband. Is this Eduardo's like sick joke? He just like puts stones and Easter bunnies and hides them in caves and makes maps.
Yeah, and whoever made that Easter bunny had to make it around the emerald.
Yeah. So like the map itself is like super piratey. Like it was inspired by like pirate movies and not like an actual old school. Yeah. Well, like very like cartoony icons on it, Goonies style.
They had it created. I read this. Yeah, the New York Times like cryptographer, like puzzle maker made the map for them. So he made it look all like exaggerated.
Yeah, it's a little bit too exaggerated. It's a little bit too cartoony. So it has me questioning what is the origins of the stone.
Yeah. It didn't seem very well hidden. There's like this one cave in this one area and you go to this like little mud pit and you dig down and it's right there.
Yeah, not the best treasure hunt movie.
Yeah.
Not the best treasure hunt experience.
As they come out of the cave with the emerald, though, here's Ralph. Has them at gunpoint. And then they're like, why would you do this? And apparently he knows all of Jack's intentions because he was like, he was going to scam you out of the stone. And Jack's like, oh, you got me. And it's like, whoa, how did he know this? And then he says the line. He goes, he was going to romance the stone away from you. You're like, oh, he said it.
He was going to rizz up the stone for you.
He does say some like really Frank Reynolds-y, like Always Sunny lines. He's like, hey, shitbags. You're like, it's Frank.
He does do like a bashing homosexual joke towards Ira. He gives him like a sick gay burn. I think he's like, what are you hanging out with men?
She's with some guy. How do I know? She likes guys. So do you, muddy cone.
Classic Frank.
Whoa. Zolo shows up again because, of course, I don't know how Zolo's always half a step behind, but he shows up.
Like we say with the treasure hunting movies, man, they're always just right there behind them.
Jack and Joan hop into Ralph's car because he leaves the key in the ignition again, never takes his key with him. And then you get a fun shot of them driving and then Danny DeVito running. And Danny DeVito running is just a hilarious
and
scene.
Shooting pistol handguns like behind his head blindly.
Just frantic DeVito.
And this is another scene where that music is coming in like it's like, all right.
They're being chased. They drive the car into a river, which then just turns into like a whitewater rafting car. And it's going down the river. And what's at the end of every river, James?
Waterfall. Trope.
So they just wear this water. Like they're getting tossed around in this car. They get thrown over the waterfall.
I think they jump out. I think it's actual stunt people jumping out simultaneously with the car. It looked dangerous.
Yeah, very. And then Jack and Joan are separated on opposite sides of a raging river that you can't get across. They're like yelling back and forth to each other. But you could tell from like the camera that it was just voiceover, but the actors had to like make hand motions to like tell where they were. So like you get Jack. I mean, I know this is a podcast, it's audio, but you get Jack like flailing his arms like, I'll meet you over there. And then also he's making these insane hand motions to her.
Definitely got the silent film treatment.
Joan has the map. Jack has the emerald. And Jack says, Jack tells Joan, go to the hotel in Cartagena and I'll meet you there.
Okay, so for the first hour and a half, they were going on about how difficult and how far it is to go to Cartagena. And then this waterfall scene happens. And then Jack's just like, head towards the sunset and you'll make it.
He'll be there in no time.
Yeah, no money, transportation, just head in a single direction as the crow flies. Like, just go that way.
Through this Colombian jungle with Zolo chasing you, you'll be fine. You'll be there in like 20 minutes.
Well, we're in Cartagena, and Joan does meet up with Ira, who takes the map and then releases Elaine. And we're like, all right, cool. And they're on this like compound, like island thing, right?
Yeah, there's like across this harbor.
They're not on the mainland. They're on some sort of weird villain island. Ira has like crocodile cells.
There's
down
a crocodile
below.
pit. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a crocodile pit and he can release them. I was thinking, all right, here comes the double cross. They're gonna dick him over, but no, it's a map for Elaine situation. And
well, they try to. Cool. They kind of hit you with a little comedy where he Ira walks up and goes,
oh, he's like,
now you and your sister are free to go.
Can go. Like, oh, okay, Ira. Good old Ira. But then Zola, God, and his men show up with the captured Jack. And I see you wrote down and a fucked up Ralph.
Yeah, they beat the shit out of Ralph after knowing he didn't have the emerald or anything. They're just like, hey.
Now, did they beat him up or did Ralph maybe get trampled by horses? Because there were those like mounted authority figures. I don't know.
He was pretty upset. Ralph was. So now Zolo's in charge. He's holding all the cards. He starts to torture Joan. And then Jack does this move where they're like, give us the emerald. And he like shakes it down his pant leg till it's like barely visible above his shoe.
It was a nut shock joke because like one of the guards, like I think hits Jack with the butt of his gun and there's like a ding sound and everyone's like, oh, his nuts are made of metal? What? And then he shakes the stone out from his pants and lands it on the top of his shoe.
Yeah. Then he kicks it. Like, you want this emerald so bad, you could take it. He kicks it. Dude, the scene was so freaking funny. Like, over Zolo's head, Zolo reaches down over the alligator pit to grab the emerald, and then immediately this gator comes out and just chomps his arm clean off. Such a clean bite. Just bone, everything just snapped.
Zolo got chubsed.
And he's just screaming. I mean, the blood loss alone would just put you down.
Yeah.
But not Zolo.
Do I have to say it? Zolo is built different, and I don't know what to say about it.
Now Zolo has bloodlust for Joan.
No, Zolo is just pissed. Like at this point, he just wants to kill Joan for sport because he's got nothing going on for himself. He's just like, all right, I lost it. The alligator's got the stone. I'm just going to murder you now because I hate you.
I don't have an arm. Yeah. Yeah. There's a callback to the first scene where Zolo is chasing or is kind of like walking towards Joan and Joan has the knife. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, they're going to make it end like one of her heroes in her book. And Joan throws the knife. Great throw right at his chest. And Zolo just like holds up a piece of wood in front of him that the knife gets into. And you're like, God, Zolo, dude, you are a problem.
Dude, not the first time he's had a knife flung at him. He knows how to get out of these pickles.
But Zolo does charge at Joan after being set on fire, and Joan just dodges him.
He can't just say he gets set on fire. He like trips and like lands on like a lantern.
Yeah.
And then just like ignites into flames. Like he's covered in oil.
So he's got one arm, he's leaking blood, he's on fire, he's got a knife in his hand. And he makes like one last dash at Joan to murder her. Joan just kind of like moves out of the way slightly and he trips into the crocodile pit, which and apparently the crocodile pit is just
like a frail wood.
Grate of wood. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like frail wood that you could just bust through if you accidentally fall on it.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Authorities arrive. Everyone's scrambling. Ira escapes. Ralph's left behind. Ralph's like, are you coming back with the boat? And Ira's like, funny. Yeah, don't worry about it. He's like, when? He's like,
soon. How soon? Very soon. And they sails away. It's like,
Ralph's just getting screwed the whole time.
Poor Ralph.
Jack and Joan share a kiss with like a really cheesy line where he's like, "You'll be okay. You always were." And then he dives into the water to fight this alligator for the emerald.
Dude, Jack is all about that money. He does not care about Joan. He's trying to get that stone.
He doesn't. While Joan was getting like chased by Zolo with his knife, he was like wrestling the alligator back on shore to get the emerald.
Yes, but he does. It's the whole decision thing. It's the Spider-Man on top of the bridge with Mary Jane and the train car full of kids. It's that moment for Jack. But he does let go of the alligator.
The fact that that's even a decision for him at this point in the movie is like, dude, red flags.
Yeah. No, I know, dude.
Like,
Jack, it shouldn't be like Jack T. Colton, T for trustworthy. It should be Jack Red Flag Colton.
Yeah.
We never found out what T stood for because he just said
it was trustworthy.
Trustworthy. And it totally wasn't.
No, he's one of the more untrustworthy people I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah. No, not about it. So he jumps off into the river. He chases the crocodile, and that's the last that Joan sees of Jack in Colombia. You're like, all right, well, that guy was crazy.
Cut to New York City. Gloria, our old editor / agent
/ whatever she does,
publisher, just kind of all around jack of all trades.
Swiss Army knife for getting books out there for Joan.
Is reading the end of Joan's novel, which is basically telling her story, except she changes the ending where the heroine and Jack end up getting on the boat and sailing around the world together. Gloria is just bawling her eyes out. Again, I'm like, it's not that good of an ending of a book. She's like, you have a bestseller on your hands.
I was thinking she's like crying at the same ending Joan has probably written for the 22nd time in her career.
Yeah, it's the same ending.
Where the man and woman fall in love together and they ride off into the sunset. I was just like, why? How is this the best work ever? This is just like everything else.
She returns home, and in the middle of the street is this truck with this giant trailer with a massive, probably 40 to 50 foot tall sailboat on it. And out jumps Jack in a Canadian tuxedo.
Wait, he was in double denim?
Oh, I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive he had a denim jacket on. I mean, I would bet good money on it.
Let me look at this. Romancing the Stone final scene. This looks like someone recorded this off their TV.
We get some nice horn music.
Oh, so he has like a leather jacket on.
It's a leather jacket, but that might be a denim shirt underneath.
But it kind of looks like a denim shirt.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's wearing like 80s, like kind of acid washed colored jeans, and the shirt does match it very well. So it does look like it's double denim up in the mix.
Looks double denim-y. Honestly, with that hair and everything, he looks a lot like MacGruber. I thought at the end, like when he's all cleaned up with that hair, he's got a real MacGruber look going on.
Well, during this touching MacGruber moment, I think Jack says, "Is this how you pictured it all ending?" And then, "Did you think we would fall in love?" Or I don't know, something. And then she says, "You know how my books all end." It's like, bitch, even you know your shit's generic.
Yeah,
because they all end the same.
He even makes a bad joke about how the crocodile got a fatal case of indigestion. You just ripped the emerald out of its stomach.
And he made boots out of them.
It would have been better if the boat was like in the water and she got a letter to like go to the harbor.
Yeah, because I was
met her
thinking,
there. Because then they have to drive off in a truck.
Yeah, because I was thinking boats are awkwardly tall when they're out of water. I don't realize how deep down they go.
Dude, I don't think you could just drive a 50-foot tall sailboat through the streets of New York City.
No, and that's why. That's that. The credits start rolling. It's just a oneer long shot of the boat trailer driving off away from the camera, looking down the city street. It was driving very slow because I'm sure of the exact reasons you just brought up. You probably can't do this, but Jack is like an unhinged bird dealing crackhead, so he doesn't care. And I think the trailer driver was probably instructed to drive hella slow because one, they're hauling this big ass boat on this trailer, and two, it looks like they kind of need to milk whatever limited streets they lock down because this boat trailer is running red lights and the extra pedestrians are also just walking in the street when it's red. And there's no other cars. The only time there's another car is when one turns onto a street and then they pause it and just let the credits run out. So I was like, was this car on the street by mistake and they only had one shot and they just...
Well, the boat drives away for the entirety of the credits.
Yeah, but then it freeze frames at a certain point when a different car comes on the street. So I was thinking, did this car fuck it up?
You could tell how slow it's all happening because, like, for reference, see how fast the pedestrians are walking and see how slow this boat is moving. Again, I don't know why the boat had to be on a trailer. It should have been in the water like boats belong.
Yeah, a little bit of a weird flex, but that's Jack. And that is Plot Talk for Romancing the Stone, directed by Robert Zemeckis.
Boom.
Nick, do you have any nitpicks?
Nitpicks.
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple. I'm confused about the is she an alcoholic B plot thing happening because it comes up 2 times, maybe 2.5 times.
Yeah,
But like it's never.
it's kind of like a quirk, not so much a B plot. Because I'm thinking about Raiders of the Lost Ark with Marion. She was introduced as having high alcohol tolerance, and it comes into play later as like a practical way to move the plot forward. However, in this case, it just seems like Joan just is jonesing for drinks.
She's jonesing for drinks. Yeah, so I thought that was a weird plot. Like, just like why'd you bring that up if it didn't matter?
I got some nitpicks here, Nick. I have we
Yeah.
got 2 big questions. I kind of hinted at them as we talked in Plot Talk.
Yeah.
1, why doesn't she just mail the map back? And there's like no other options explored. After she gets a frantic phone call, you have to come to Columbia, bring the map, bring it in person. And that's it. Like, can't call the cops, can't contact the American embassy in Colombia, can't do any other option. Just like, nope, got to go on the plane.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. She's just trusted.
Mail the map.
Yep.
Yeah. Why do I have to personally hand it off to these murderers?
I don't know.
2, why not just fly straight into Cartagena? Why fly into this other airport and then not make a plan of where you're supposed to go and just take the word of this complete stranger and get on the wrong bus? 2 very important questions that would have just completely changed the plot of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I brought it up during Plot Talk. Another question could be, why was the map sent to her?
Yeah, I mean, I said it before, maybe you have to draw up your own conclusions, but a lot of this stuff is not explained.
No.
It's just kind of like, here's the situation and now deal with it. Characters, you need to deal with it. Audience, you need to deal with it.
Gotta love that.
Nick, my last nitpick is very prominently shown throughout this entire movie. I see that you agree here. There's way too many old timey Western bullet ricochet sound effects. Every other shot has like a ricochet. Sound effect. When it like hits dirt. Like it's bouncing off metal.
Yeah, it ends up starting to sound a little bit like laser beams when there's enough of them, like the ricochet sound. It's like sounds like a blaster in Star Wars. You're like, you could tell it was just way too Westerny. I think I was reading somewhere that there was some ties to some like old Western productions. Maybe Zemeckis, is loyal to a fault. He brought over some old Western guy to do his
the Foley
SFX.
Work. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, hey, he's the guy.
Hey, you got those bullet sound effects for me?
So what are we thinking? We thinking saloon shootout? Or are we thinking dusty street shootout?
Well, for talking points, one of my talking points was gonna be the influence of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but like we discussed, debunked. This movie was written before Raiders, so I don't have any talking points for you. That was going to be a main focal point for me. Do you have any for me?
Yeah, I have 2. One little, maybe not a talking point. Fun fact though. So this movie takes place in quote unquote Colombia, and it was actually supposed to be filmed in Colombia originally, but funny enough, there were too many kidnapping of Americans in Colombia at the time, so they switched over to Mexico.
Is that funny, Nick? That Americans were getting kidnapped?
I mean, it's ironic.
No, it is. It's very ironic. The whole plot of this movie was a kidnapping.
I find
in Colombia.
irony
like,
funny.
We can't go to Colombia because we're going to get kidnapped, just like what's happening in this movie.
Can't bring the crew over there.
And it kind of it makes sense, you kind of just film where Although I did read a lot of just turmoil shooting this movie because of the jungle locations, like rain would just like monsoons would just like encapsulate the set on like seconds notice, and filming in the river and just out in the jungle. I get why people just go to places they know, or they stick to a soundstage. But I've known a couple people who filmed in Hawaii, and they're like, it sounds great, but when we're on those exterior shots and we're just like on this rock covered beach, that's just like we're like lugging all our shit across the beach, like all the equipment, where it's like mosquitoes, sunscreen. It's an endurance ride for sure.
Yeah, I think you'd also run into on Raiders, what they ran into, right? Like the food, the water, like what's edible, what's potable, right? Our crew's going to get sick. I mean, there's a lot to take into account there.
It's a different beast out there when you're not on the studio lot.
All right, James, I got one more thing for you. And I have a theory for you. A wild movie theory.
Oh, okay. Wait, are you practicing for our end of the year episode when we spin our theories?
I am, but this one hit me pretty hard.
I'm here for it.
As I was watching it, it really came into effect. And this may actually solve some of our nitpicks and our questions about how convenient things are in the tropes.
I think I know where this is going now.
So in the beginning of the movie, one of the very first scenes, she's in her apartment, right? She just got done writing her book. She's like crying. She's emotional. She wants this man. Then she lights all these candles, and she lights her fire, and she drinks, and she passes out. I think she forgot to open the flume on her chimney. She fell asleep, smoke inhalation, and this whole thing is a hallucination. This is all a big dream. I mean, think about it, dude. She's going on this wild adventure. She's saved by who in the jungle? Not a Colombian, a random American. The name Jack T. Colton, that's a book character's name.
Super phony.
Every main character who she needs to interact with magically speaks English and she can communicate with. I mean, how many people in the back jungles of Colombia should honestly speak English? None. Everyone there speaks English. The plot is basically one of her books. She brings up with the idol where the emerald's hidden inside. Oh, this is how one of my books went.
Okay.
The ending, everything. This is all in her head. And she finds her perfect man who she's going to go sail around the world with. It's just the plot of one of her books. So she's so lost in her imagination and so lonely and desperate that this is all made up in her imagination. None of this movie is real.
As soon as you said something that dropped a hint, I was thinking, oh, yeah, I can totally see this just being a fictional story that she's writing. And she's just like inceptioning herself.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you were going to tie in a practical in-plot mechanism of the flume being closed. She is suffering from a carbon monoxide poisoning.
She passes out drunk with no problems, and then she wakes up to the phone call of her sister being kidnapped. That's what kicks it all off. It's that wake up from drinking, and that's where it all starts to go wild.
That's the pinpoint right there. That's the break from reality to this hallucination.
Yes, and that's what all this is. There's no other way to explain everything that happens in this movie.
Well, we'll have to see the Jewel of the Nile at some point and see how that ties into this reality, or if it's a continuation of your hallucination theory that might just bust this movie wide open. And speaking of busting this movie wide open, I'm going to lay it out there for what this movie is. Can I hit you with my sarcastic selling point?
I would love it.
This is Indiana Jones dipped in 1980s action TV show cheese. Think Miami Vice, Chips, Magnum PI, Dukes of Hazzard, all those kind of classic made for TV. Not quite up there in production value as far as like stunt work and writing and stuff like that. It's kind of like a made for TV swag with the inspiration of Raiders of the Lost Ark, even though it wasn't, like we discussed.
Well, we're on the same page, buddy, because I just said it's a Raiders of the Lost Ark rom-com.
Boom, baby. Boom, 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 boom. That's an endless shotgun for you guys.
Final review. Fight.
Looking at what the other guys are saying, starting with Rotten Tomatoes, our favorite binary voting system in the world, critics, 86% like this movie.
And the audience gave it a 69.
Hell yeah, dude. Valentine's Day Romance movie, 69%. Hell yeah, dude.
Hell yeah.
We're going to kill the mood and the boners in the room with Metacritic. The weighted average score of critics from then till now, 63, translates to a 6.3 on our scale.
And the people loved this, giving it an 8.0.
Hell yeah.
So Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, the audience and the critics flipped, interestingly enough.
And now for our mudsliding, treasure hiding, jungle guiding, endless shotgun blasting score from IMDb, 6.9. Sexy 69.
I knew IMDb wouldn't let us down.
You dogs.
All right, James. Well, I think it is your turn this week to give me your laughable log line, followed by your final word.
Here we go. My laughable log line is: a lonely alcoholic cat lady ignores the services of the U.S. Post Office as well as the convenience of a map to turn over a treasure map to murderous treasure hunters who kidnapped her sister after her sister or husband mailed it to her, which leads her to Colombia, where she meets her unhinged codependent dream guy who slings birds for money on the Colombian back roads, has an elite shotgun, and is a little pervy. This is going to get 6.2 popcorn points from me. So this movie does land underneath the good, bad rating for me. It's not the worst thing I've seen, but there's a lot that is wrong with this movie for me. I think we'll do the kudos here. So kudos to this movie. One for Diane Thomas, like we touched upon. Gone too soon. Very promising writer. Was good enough to start working with Steven Spielberg. Career just kind of got cut short there. This did kind of vault Michael Douglas into like a movie star role because he was mostly like TV acting and kind of producing. Maybe
first action gig.
Yeah, maybe he was thinking, I might just go producer route if acting doesn't take off. But this really vaulted his career. Robert Zemeckis, this allowed him to make Back to the Future, which, like I said, one of my favorite trilogies of all time. Cool side bonus stars there. Nothing to do with the rating. But this is entertaining enough to be in the sixes for me. I feel like a movie we watched last year, kind of like Cutthroat Island. I originally gave a 5, but then I dinked it down to the 4s. That was kind of just like I never cared. At least with this movie, I kind of had a couple things I laughed at. Danny DeVito is always a treasure when he's in a movie. I do like Michael Douglas, but I did feel like this movie just had it I want to call it a copycat of Raiders, but I know it wasn't. But maybe, hey, who's to say the studio wasn't on board with just emulating that energy and seeing how well Raiders did. You know, they kind of got similar budgets almost, because Raiders was 18 million and raked in 389 million. This movie's 10 million and, you know, got 86, not anywhere near Raiders, but I think they were just trying to capitalize on that Saturday matinee serial kind of fun. Don't take yourself too seriously. This is an escapist movie. We're just going to watch this for pure entertainment value. Now, I do believe a movie can be rated pretty decently with entertainment value alone. But with that said, I just feel like there's not really much story here. And the big crux of this movie is the treasure hunting aspect. Like, it's not a treasure hunt movie. It's like I wouldn't call it romance either, because they're just kind of like infatuated with each other. And it's like all like fantasy. And there's I never for a second bought that these two characters actually cared about each other. But it's not the worst thing I've seen. I don't absolutely hate it. So this is, for reference, right below Jack Frost and right below Flubber for me. I could use more treasure hunting and character building, but you know, that's Romancing the Stone for me.
Very nice, James. I agree with a lot of what you said. My laughable log line here was: a lonely author plays out the plot of one of her novels through a hallucination.
Oh, you're just sticking with your theory for your log line.
I'm not wrong.
He's corrupt, ladies and gentlemen.
And for me, this is a 5. Straight 5.
Yeah, I can see that.
In my opinion, like the most 5 you can get. Like one of the most average movies I think I've seen. Like, I pretty much agree with everything you said, James. I have a lot of the same thoughts. Just for me, that lands it at a 5. I mean, it was funny in some parts. It was, there were some fun action sequences. There was a lot of sequences of like you'd have like 3 to 4 minute just either like chase scenes, action scenes, which were fun, shootout scenes, dancing scenes, and so it was a lot of
There's a lot going on screen
stuff happening
for us to watch.
Yeah. Honestly, for $10 million, I thought it was pretty for 1984. $10 million. I thought it was pretty good production.
It milked
value.
a lot.
Yeah, good production value.
They were like, we got $30,000 left. What do you want to do? Let's haul the boat on the street.
That was probably a good chunk of the budget. But yeah, for me, it was, like you said, character development was a little off. It was almost like a story for the sake of telling a story. Like you said, didn't care about the characters, never got emotionally invested in it. Kind of jumping point A to point B. The treasure hunting, like you were saying, was almost like an excuse for the movie to happen.
Non-existent.
Yeah. And they never really even explained the map, where it came from. Is this like a secret treasure, an ancient treasure? It just...
Yeah. No.
So it was weird to me. So it was hard for me to get invested in the plot. But, like you said, it wasn't bad enough to dip below like a 5, right into the 4s where things start to get real sketchy.
Get a little hinky down there.
Yeah. It's like, once you get into the 4s, but if you're in the 5s, so you're usually
5s is pretty like
right.
You're not emotionally invested. Like when I watched it originally, I had the same thoughts and feelings, I believe. And then I thought, oh, that'd be kind of fun to watch again. So like, that's my thoughts and my memory on this movie is, oh yeah, that was pretty good. I'll rewatch it. I'll be like, it wasn't that good.
I mean, critics having it at an 86 though that's a lot for me. That's a lot for me.
Crazy.
I mean, I saw this on lists of like some of the best, funniest movies of the last, 50 years. And
not that funny.
Some of the more fun. Yeah. Funny enough, but
a couple laughs there and there, but not hilarious.
Yeah. So it's just a 5. Again, it was not bad, not good. Just for me, it was just kind of there. Rewatchability, meh.
Yeah, very on par with Cutthroat Island.
Yeah.
Okay, well, obviously we didn't love this movie, but maybe you love it and maybe you love your significant other because it's Valentine's Day, baby. And guess what? We're coming back for a 4th straight week in a row next week. We need you guys to tune in as we dip back in to that NCU.
What's a hint for this one? A good hint that won't give it away. It co-stars a actor who has become a very prominent figure in the current Marvel universe.
Chew on that and try to guess what we're watching next week. Thank you guys very much for listening. Please follow us on socials at Just Play It Podcast on YouTube and Instagram, and follow us on Just Play It Pod on X, formerly known as Twitter. We're going to be heading gone. We're out of here. We love you guys. Happy Valentine's Day. And remember, if you're mailed a treasure map from a murdered family member, do not engage. Find a new apartment with your cat. Do not go on a crazy escapade adventure. It will not end with a guy pulling up to your apartment with a boat on a trailer. Don't do it.
But I chalked it up to this man's just been in the jungle with his birds like for far too long.
It's not okay to be a pervy bird man.